have the country's anti-graft head, Commissioner Francis Ben Kaifala. Good morning and welcome to AYV.
Very good morning.
It's a pleasure having you here. And also have a very special guest who will be delivering a lecture later today, which definitely AYV will bring to you live. And he is the director of Kenya Law, and he is the former anti-graft boss of Kenya, and he is Professor Patrick Lumumba. Good morning.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
It's a pleasure having you
I'm
here.
no longer the director of the Kenya School of Law.
Okay.
I left in the month of March.
This year?
In the month of March this year.
So
Thank you very
was
much.
it? So you, our viewers and listeners, later on we shall see whether or not we'll be able to entertain your questions or comments in the show. But I'm going to start with the commissioner himself. First off, overall, since you took up office, how would you describe the fight against corruption?
Well, as you may have been following, the fight against corruption has taken a really different turn in Sierra Leone. The president declared a war, and he called upon me to lead it. And that war has been raging on fiercely, but fairly, and the results are coming in. Cases are being investigated and prosecuted faster on a scale that has never existed before. And we are also having convictions. In fact, during this period, there is a 100% rate, as you are aware. And there are the recoveries as well, because we are trying as a commission to balance prosecution with recovery, because there are times when the resources that are lost by the people, that are taken from the people, have to be brought back to them. And most of the anti-graft fights, particularly in other places, and even before now in Sierra Leone, have been towards tracing assets out of the country, which, as you know, is difficult to really bring back, or when it comes back, what comes is usually little. So even internally, the focus of the fight against corruption has been both balancing prosecution and also making sure we retrieve as much as we can from those who take monies from people, and so far we've been able to recover over $1 million.
Let's talk about the preventive measures as a commission that you've been undertaking. Yes,
we have, as a commission, and as you know, I have been saying this, that a fight against corruption that is entirely focused on investigation and prosecution is a weak fight. Many will see it as strong, but it is not really strong. What is really strong and the best way to approach corruption is to invest in prevention. And as a commission, we have been engaging in systems and processes reviews with ministries, departments of agencies. What is good about this is that, in fact, even ministries and departments write to us to say, we want your team to come and review our systems and advise us on things we can do to reduce possibilities of corruption. So we have been working on that a lot, and it is helping us to really ensure that, particularly after the transition, that the new political class understand that this is no longer business as usual, and we are trying to see how that can be used to really transform the story of this country.
Let's go to the local theme, retracing the anthems of West Africa, the centrality of the fight against corruption in achieving President Julius Maada Bio's vision of a reborn, prosperous Sierra Leone. Why this particular theme?
As you know, after the president, His Excellency retired Brigadier Julius Maada Bio, was elected to power, he was elected on 3 themes. His promise to the people of Sierra Leone were to deliver 3 things: to change the country from the level of lawlessness that existed, to also ensure that education is made the centerpiece of the developmental transformation of the country, and also he promised to robustly fight corruption. Those are the 3 pillars. So in that pillar, he launched the free quality education, which is really to try to question and to also provide answers as to why Sierra Leone has slipped down the ladders in terms of academia. In years past, as you know, this was the part of the world. This is Sierra Leone attracted people from all over the world, from as Kenya, from Nigeria, from Ghana, from Southern Africa. Everybody came to Sierra Leone to specialize, particularly at Frabe College. And so, over the years, since the 80s coming up to the 90s, Athens was lost. And he came and now introduced the free quality education. So, what this team is saying is that we are trying to combine the two most important aspects of the president's promise to the people of Sierra Leone, that is providing education, to have a way of restoring Athens, and also to fight corruption to make sure that governance is better. So this theme combines those two things so that we can retrace the Athens of Africa and restore our image in the country in terms of academia, in terms of producing human resources that can benefit the country and Africa as a whole, but also to ensure that the fight against corruption protects that kind of rebranding of the country and repositioning of the country. And that is why the theme is that retracing the Athens of Africa, the centrality of the fight against corruption in achieving the president's vision of a prosperous, reborn Sierra Leone, because that is the aim, that is the vision, that is where we want to go. The reason why we are fighting corruption robustly now is to get there. The reason why we have free quality education now is to get there. And that is why we invited a very eminent professor, Pierre Lumumba, who we all know has been a leading voice in speaking on anti-graft issues in Africa and even the world. And we have brought in him as a Pan-Africanist to really seal the year where we have drawn a line on corruption and we are winning. We are heading towards winning in terms of corruption control. And his lecture is to really put us on the footing so that next year we will continue in the trajectory that we have started as a country.
And that's where I would have to usher him in this particular conversation. You've been very, very bold on the global stage in terms of talking against corruption, how corruption can be defeated across the globe. From that global perspective, how do you see the fight itself?
Let me say that part of the message that we have been carrying across the continent of Africa, and as you've rightly said, in the world, is to remind ourselves that Africa could have been in a better place if the resources of the continent were deployed for the benefit of the people of Africa in the area of education, in the area of health, in the area of infrastructure, and in the area of agriculture, so that Africa could feed ourselves, educate our people, make our people a little healthy, and therefore improve household incomes, and by extension, therefore make the continent a lot more competitive. And I hold the view that one of the things that has stood in the way of the realization of that dream is the privatization of public wealth by individuals who do not mean well for the continent, and to have these resources kept in different parts of the world. And I think that the more we speak about and against corruption, and therefore plant in people's minds the truth that corruption is not a victimless crime, we are able to tell the people who are in Freetown, Sierra Leone, the people who are in Bangui in the Central African Republic, that when you go to hospital and you don't find medicine, is because somebody who had the obligation to provide that medicine took away the money and bought a flat in Milan in Italy. If you go to agriculture and you have fertilizers that is not good, is somebody abused their office. And we think that this is the kind of message that should be repeated time and time again, so that people are able to appreciate that corruption indeed, number one, undermines democracy, and number two, undermines economic development, and number three, also has a negative impact on social cohesion.
And so this is where I want to bring in your personal experience here. When you were championing the fight in your country, Kenya, for example, how is it like to fight corruption in the continent?
Let me say that one of the things that makes the fight against corruption a difficult one is the absence of political goodwill. If there is no political goodwill, then it becomes very difficult to fight corruption. Remember, there is this wrong perception that the war against corruption can be won by individuals or by an anti-corruption body. If you take any anti-corruption body, take, for example, the anti-corruption body here in Sierra Leone, I don't think they have more than 300 personnel who are dealing with 7 million people in Sierra Leone. The fight against corruption in Sierra Leone, and indeed in any country in Africa and in the world, is the fight for everybody. Everybody in their little corner must ensure that they contribute positively in the fight against corruption. Number two, the people must also be intolerant towards people who engage in corruption. And this is why I've said times without number that in order to fight against corruption, we must introduce hygiene in our politics. How do we elect men and women into public office? If we want men and women who seek political office to bribe us, then we are telling them that once you get into public office, then you have a license and the freedom to abuse your office. So the electorate must also wake up, and wake up in a manner that informs their action. And number three, that we must have systems that operate so that we prevent corruption. There is a sense in which the drama that accompanies arrest and prosecution is what people think is the fight against corruption. That is only a small aspect of it. The fight against corruption is about educating the people, and the people beginning to appreciate that corruption is something that is harmful to them, and also to create an environment where the ability to engage in corrupt activities is diminished. So in a nutshell, I'm saying that the fight against corruption is not an easy one. When you enter into that office, you lose friends. When you enter into that office, you'll be accused of many things. People will accuse you personally of being corrupt simply because you are in the fight against corruption. There are people who on a daily basis are going to use, particularly in these days of Twitter and social media, there are people who will use that medium to discourage you. There are people who will use that medium to dampen your spirit. There are people who will concoct stories about and against those who are involved in the fight against corruption. But the spirit is never say die. The spirit is that you must fight corruption, knowing that corruption will fight back. And when you do that, and you have a clean conscience, there is a sense in which you will, in the fullness of time, through personal lifestyle, demonstrate to these individuals that you are right.
Is corruption winnable? Is the fight winnable?
Yes. The fight against corruption is winnable. But let us ask ourselves, what does winnable mean? Does it mean that corruption is eliminated and therefore we are living in heaven where everything is good and all we say is hallelujah? No. We are saying that we can fight corruption and ensure that corruption is the exception other than the rule. In countries where we say that corruption is minimal, for example, if we cite in Africa countries such as Botswana, countries such as Mauritius, to a certain extent countries such as Rwanda, we are not saying that corruption has been totally eliminated. We are simply saying that corruption is the exception other than the rule. In countries where corruption has a monumental negative impact, the unfortunate reality is corruption is the rule and is dominant and is present in every sector. We have already seen since the coming into office of the current president of Sierra Leone and the coming into office of the new crop of leaders in the anti-corruption sector in Sierra Leone, a number of things have happened. The public now recognizes that the president is committed in the fight against corruption, which is a good thing. That does not mean that the president does not have detractors. He will always have them, even when he means well. But what that means, number one, is that there is political goodwill. When you have political goodwill, then the arms of the anti-corruption authority is strengthened. And when it is strengthened, then they have public acceptance. When they have public acceptance, it means that the judiciary also responds in a positive way. And when it responds in a positive way, then people are punished. And when people are punished, then the people know that there are consequences when you engage in corrupt activities. And when you do that, then people are afraid. And when people are afraid, then they are reluctant to engage in corruption. To that extent, therefore, corruption is winnable in that sense. And that is what we aspire to do. And one of the things that I keep on saying, in a country where corruption is being fought and fought effectively, an anti-corruption authority should work itself out of office so that in 20 years from today, it will not be necessary to have an anti-corruption authority because corruption will have been reduced to a very minimal level, and it will not be necessary to have a body dedicated to the fight against corruption because the people themselves will be the warriors in the fight against corruption.
And the professor made something very critical and crucial in the fight against corruption, especially in Sierra Leone. If you don't prosecute, if you don't arrest people, if you don't get people convicted, then the Anti-Corruption Commission is being compromised. You're not being effective. You're not doing your work. And that is very bold in Sierra Leone in the fight. How does that affect the operations of the commission?
Yes, I mean, the fact of the matter is this. We at the Anti-Corruption, for example, have the pillars upon which we operate. And therefore, there is investigation, there is prosecution, there is public education, there is systems and processes review, which is prevention. I think a good anti-corruption campaign at this stage, in a country where the perception of the people is that there is a high level of impunity, there has to be a rich balance between prevention, which the professor is laying emphasis on, and which since I came into office, I have been saying that that is the strongest way to fight corruption. So there has to be a rich balance between prevention and prosecution. Because even the public education that we do, teaching people about corruption, telling them that things are, corruption is destroying you, trying to draw a linkage between them and corruption, will be futile if they believe that there is impunity within the rank and file of the political class, of the ruling class, of the elites. So trying to balance prosecution and prevention is very useful at this stage of our anti-corruption fight. People have to see real examples. Examples in Singapore, they don't have an anti-corruption public education system. They set examples. They take the richest man in the country who is engaging in corruption and make him poor and send him back in society, and people see him passing around in rags. To them, they say that is the best way to fight corruption. That is the best deterrent. When people see what is happening, that is where their motto is that it is better for you to sin against God than to be corrupt. And Singapore is one of the countries that has really brought corruption to an almost minimal level. So a rich balance between prosecution and prevention is useful at this stage. There will be a stage when, as the professor has rightly explained, when the political class will be aware that to engage in this is more harmful to them than not to. Once we reach that stage, then you will see that prosecution it will make itself redundant. Then we still continue focusing on public education, we still continue focusing on systems and processes review and prevention. So that is the position we are in. At this stage in our history, investigation and real-time punishment have to be balanced with prevention.
Correct. So let me take you back to the political will he spoke about earlier. We all know in the country where we live, in a society like Sierra Leone, when you tell people that you have the political will, it is like you dancing to the tune of the current political system, not fighting corruption, but everything that has to do with them will be good in the eyes of the public.
Yes, I mean, one misunderstanding, and I've tried to clarify this recently. Independence does not mean you are not part of the governance structure of the country. Independence does not mean you are not autonomous. But to say that the commission is so independent that it has or have nothing to do with the ruling, with the leadership of the country, is a myth. But what you can do is to have sufficient autonomy for you to be functionally independent, so that the president or his men don't call you in the morning to tell you arrest Mr. X and you are running to go and arrest Mr. X. For the president and his men not to call you in the morning to say this man is dangerous to us, and you weaponize the commission to carry out battles for the political class. You can sufficiently say, no sir, I will not do this. No sir, I cannot do this. You can do your work without seeking approval from State House. That is the kind of thing, but you are part of the governance apparatus of the country. So the way people approach this is sometimes a little bit not what it should be. However, as an anti-corruption fighting institution, you have to show the people that you have the backbone
to take decisions on your own, to be functionally independent, to carry out and produce results on your own. Once you do that, I'm sure the people will understand that you are indeed independent, and that is what the independence that people yearn for, they think about, that is what really it is. Therefore, it is not generally that you really don't have anything to do with the president. No, the mandate you are appointed by the president, the mandate you carry has to be within the vision of the president and for the country.
And let me just add on that. There is this misconception that an anti-corruption body is something that has come from the air and therefore operates as if it does not belong to a system. And I think the Commissioner has put it very well. What one is talking about when one talks about independence is functional independence and autonomy in decision-making. Remember that the Anti-Corruption Authority is resourced by government. Remember that it is part of a system. Remember that if an administration comes into office and says that one of the things that we are going to fight against is corruption, it depends on that body, and therefore there must be a system and a forum at which the Anti-Corruption Authority also accounts to the political class in terms of saying, we have this mandate and we are carrying out this mandate in accordance with the will of the people as expressed through their political leadership, and that therefore what we are doing independently, and in terms of decision making, nobody tells us what to do. That is what independence is all about.
And so let me take you to what you are here for in Sierra Leone. How would you be speaking to the minds of Sierra Leoneans on how all sorts of people will be able to retrace the anthems of West Africa?
Let it be known that when individuals such as myself are invited to a country such as Sierra Leone, or indeed any country, we do not come to such countries because we know better than they do. We do not come to Sierra Leone because we have solutions. We do not come to Sierra Leone to pontificate. We do not come to Sierra Leone to prescribe. We do not come to Sierra Leone to pretend to have this magic wand which, upon being waved, solves all the problems of Sierra Leone. We come here to share our thoughts. We come here to energize the people. We come here to remind our kin and kith in Sierra Leone that in this fight we are together. We come here to tell them and to remind them that there are people out there who wish them well, and that these ideas that we have combined with their own will cross-fertilize, or if you may, will cross-pollinate their very own, which may indeed be superior. And in that way, you borrow knowledge, you borrow experience. We are able to share the mistakes that we have made so that they become learning points. We are able to share some of the difficulties that we have experienced so that they are able to learn from them. That is what we come to do, and that is what I will do, to share my thoughts in the knowledge that I have no monopoly of knowledge nor wisdom.
So is it going to be like you diagnosing the problems of corruption or prescribing solutions to them?
First of all, the problems of corruption are already diagnosed. We know the impact of corruption. All of us know the impact of corruption in different sectors, in people's lives, in agriculture, in health, in education, in infrastructure, and in very many other areas that affect the people, the young people who cannot find jobs. We are able to trace their current plight because there has been a history of men and women who occupied public office who did not use public office in a proper manner. So we are not going to be prescriptive because that would be arrogant. We are not going to be diagnostic because we already know the problem. We are simply going to remind the people of Sierra Leone, as we remind ourselves and Africans, that there is a battle to be fought and that we are all soldiers in the field. Beyond that, let me not take the thunder from the conversation I'll have this evening.
and exactly, I started. And I'm not sure how much you know about the state of corruption in Sierra Leone, but we live in a society where instead of me following the rules or the procedures as being prescribed by the champions of the fight against corruption, or rather bribe to just have my way, just a smooth, go smooth, and I don't waste time.
You know, in this fight against corruption, I've become a little bit more spiritual. So all of us, we have all sinned and fallen short of the glory of man and God. And I normally pose the first question: who among you will throw the first stone, as Christ would have done or other spiritual beings would have done? And my view is that our duty individually and collectively is to remind ourselves that engaging in corruption is not only harmful to me and others, but harmful to this generation and generations yet to be born. Once we are alive to that reality, once we are able to connect our plight with the corrupt activities that we engage in and which we have normalized, because in countries where corruption is rampant, the absurd has become normal. The duty of the anti-corruption authority is to remind us every so often that what you think is normal is abnormal, and therefore we ought to go back to the past, go back to the basics, morally rearm ourselves. And that when we morally rearm ourselves, we'll then be able to recognize that what we are engaged in is harmful. As I sometimes say a little bit dramatically, the beauty of a guest is that he comes to your house and is able to point at a cobweb which you long thought was part of your furniture, and he reminds you that that is not your furniture, it's a cobweb. Then you look at it a little bit more keenly and you say, behold, a cobweb, and then you remove it. Perhaps that is the role that I'm going to play. And if I play that role in a modest way, that will be my contribution. That will be part of the crusade that we are holding. But we are saying so in humility, and we are also going to point out the areas where we ourselves have made mistakes in the past, because we have made mistakes. And if we have made mistakes, we should not then sink into the ground simply because we have made mistakes. We are able to then say, we made this mistake. Don't repeat it. It is a learning point. That is why you call people, not because they are angels who have no mistakes in their lives. No, it's because they are human beings, and in their daily transaction they may have engaged in activities, and they are able by reason of experience to say, this path, we thought it was the right path, but when we followed it, we recognized that it was not the right path. Don't take it. Take another path. That is why sharing experience is very important going forward, so that people learn from the mistakes you made and the successes that you scored, and all those factors conjoined then energizes you going forward. And that is the contribution that we expect to make.
Commissioner, let me ask this question. With all the gains you've made since you took up office, how am I still safe to say corruption is endemic in Sierra Leone?
Yes, it's too early for us to say that corruption has been eradicated. But what I know is happening, and I'm sure you are aware, is that there is a serious perceptual shift happening. The citizens are owning the fight against corruption. Perhaps for the first time, we have been able to sufficiently draw a linkage between the fight against corruption and the plight of the people in Sierra Leone. That is why when I took over, and I remember having an interview here, and I said, look, we have declared this a People's Commission. We are bringing them along. We are informing them about the evidence we have, people we are investigating. We are telling them about the wrongs in society. We are identifying the malaises that are destroying the fabric of society to make sure that resources which is trickled down to them
which should have been trickling down to them and not trickling down to them. We are telling them that this is why it is happening. This is what is happening. So there is a serious perceptual shift happening. Sooner or later, we are going to have the statistics coming out, and you understand that the people are owning the fight against corruption. And the people are owning the fight against corruption, and by owning the fight against corruption, they are also believing in the institution that has been mandated by law to fight corruption. That balance is going to be very useful to Sierra Leone in the years to come. It is the foundation upon which we are now going to build. It is the foundation that we are developing to have a synergy around the citadel of corruption, to have a serious assault on it and deal it a very debilitating blow in the years to come.
I followed your post on Facebook saying the People's Commission, in fact, to this program is open to every Sierra Leonean. But at the end of the day, both of you have said the fight against corruption fights back. So the question is, are you tough enough when corruption fights back?
That was a very interesting question. Samuel, I can tell you this. To me, this is not about the salary I get when I'm in office. As you know, I was a successful lawyer already. And this is not really about producing results for political class or not. This is a national service. I see myself as a volunteer. I can tell you this, I have never been more resolved in my life than now. This fight is going to be fought in a way that Sierra Leone has never seen before. By the time I leave that office, my intention, working with the hardworking women, men and women of the commission who are giving their all to support the vision of a transformed anti-corruption commission that will produce the result of the people. By the time I leave that office, I am sure we all will sit down one day and look back. But I am ready for this. I have developed the backbone to do this, and I am going to lead this fight in the vision that the president has sent me to do, to say, cleanse the image of this country. The cost of corruption on Sierra Leone is so high. It's so high that investors are afraid to come into the country. The cost of corruption on Sierra Leone is so high that even donor agencies who support our budgets are being asked in their parliaments, where are you throwing water in sand? We don't want you putting your money in that country. The cost of corruption is so high that our brothers and sisters who leave our countries to go in other countries are not respected because our passport is not respected. It is that image cleansing that we are going to do. And the aim is corruption control, for it to ensure that economic policies, decisions, actions create the right environment for investment, that things that the government is doing, efforts that the government is putting in, trickle down to the people in terms of good healthcare system, good water systems, good road networks, proper housing systems, and above all, a better quality of life for Sierra Leoneans. We are ready for this. The team at the commission, the hardworking men and women who wake up every day to go there and to put their lives on the line are ready. And we are ready to make the sacrifice for Sierra Leone.
Corruption has been attributed maybe to societal malaise. So what do you think would be the impact of today's engagement?
Today's engagement, as the professor has rightly said, there are times when society becomes static, particularly because the voices they hear as familiar voices. They are ready to look at Kaifala and say, oh, this is the man that I went to the Sierra Leone Grammar School with. Why is he telling me about corruption? The cobweb that the professor has said. There are things which are there which every day we are saying are wrong. But they are saying, oh, this is Kaifala who was appointed by President Bio, but President Bio is SLPP. Therefore, he is SLPP, and therefore he has nothing to tell us. The impact of this is to bring a respected voice on anti-graft issues in Africa, who are spoken in countries, invited everywhere in the world, universities in the US, everywhere. Putting out a credible voice on the fight against corruption. He's coming to help us take this message to the people. And that is why Whilst we are having this in an elitist setting at Frabe College in the form of a lecture, after the professor shall have presented his lecture, we are making sure, that is why we have brought down our public education department from all over the provinces, all the regions, they are here. They are going to sit down there, listen to the professor, have recordings of what he says, transcribe it into the various languages of the country, take it back to the people. The next 1 to 2 weeks, this is what will be discussed. This is how we are closing the year. And the idea is to capture the minds of the people for what is to come in the following year. This is a battle that is going to rage on for a little while, but we will get there.
Indeed.
With the countries you've visited, the continent, for example, having assessed their seriousness in fighting corruption, how would you consider or assess Sierra Leone's enthusiasm in fighting this menace?
One of the beautiful things that I now see in Africa is the recognition in every African country that corruption is a cancer in our lives and that we have to fight. That you find everywhere. Everybody you talk to in the political class tells you that unless we deal with corruption and deal corruption a death blow, then it continues to undermine us, not only within the country, but amongst the community of nations. And one of the things that I find quite attractive is that since the coming into office of the administration of President Bio and the appointment of the new office, the enthusiasm with which the fight against corruption has been renewed, the conviction rates, the recoveries, is beginning to send a clear message to the people that the fight is being fought with renewed energy. And I think the Commissioner Francis has said it very well. It is too early to judge the winner of a marathon race after 100 meters. This is a marathon race. It is too early to suggest to the people that the fight has been won. And it must be that we remind the people that this is your fight. In fact, what I love about the clarion call of the Anti-Corruption Authority in Sierra Leone is to remind the people that this is your war. Yeah. You are not spectators in this war. It is. We are simply providing the leadership in this war. And once we do that, I think we are in a good space. And I hold the view that the Anti-Corruption Authority is in the right place. They are at the right pace. They need to be energized. They need to be supported. They need to be encouraged. And if that is done and done consistently, then in a few years' time, we'll be able to say, yes, they served well. Sometimes the gains and the results we expect may not be as dramatic as we expect them. Sometimes they may not even occur in our lifetime. But our joy is that we have started the fight.
We've started the fight, and we still have a long way to go in ensuring that we get to where we want to get as a nation and ensure that nation building comes first. But how do you instill integrity in those of our public officials who are supposed to set that pace for us coming in?
Well, the most important thing is public officials are 100% literate and they understand. If any public officer tells you that he does not understand what is corruption, then that is not correct. He may not understand the extent to which it affects people's lives. He may be selfish in the way he thinks, but they know. So instilling integrity in them is a continuing process, a continuum. Educating them, discussions like we are having, the kinds of engagement that we are going to have later today at 4 p.m. at the Frabe College Amphitheater, where a professor will be providing. Everyone will be there, from the Chief Justice to the Speaker of the House of Parliament, the Chief Minister, to ministers of government, heads of parastatals. For them to be reminded, it's not that they are not aware as to what their social contract is and how corruption is a breach of that social contract. That makes sure that the performance at the end of the day is not optimal for the people who voted them, who they represent in office. So integrity drive is a continuum. We will continue engaging them. That is why we have, for example, as you are aware also,
We have the integrity management committees in every ministry, department, and agency. So the integrity management committee is like a sub-ACC in every ministry, department, or agency of government. They have the chairman, they have a secretary, and they are there to remind the ruling class, the political elite, those in government, the civil and public servants, of what it is to make sure that integrity maintained. That is why they are called the integrity management committees. And they are there across every MDA. And we are trying to make sure that the message of anti-corruption, the message of ethical behavior, the message of integrity is permeated within the system and is repeated within the system. And once in a while, we as an authority who have been mandated by the state also coming to remind them of their obligation to ensure that they produce results for the country with integrity and fairness.
In the fight against corruption, quickly before going to the callers, in the fight against corruption in the continent for Africa, you are very much integral. And so what would you consider the reformatory way forward? Perhaps many Sierra Leoneans would want to say the path to salvation in the fight against corruption, especially when it comes to, you see politicians, when a government is fighting corruption, other politicians saying it's witch hunt. How do you fight detractors?
You know, at one time when I heard the word witch hunt, I said, there are no witches and there are no hunters. What we are dealing with are individuals who have chosen to use their public office or to misuse their offices, and therefore they come on the radar of the law, and they have got to be dealt with in accordance with the law. And once there is that awareness amongst the people, then nobody will talk about witch hunt, because there will be a body of evidence which every rational person looking at will say, this evidence holding all factors constant simply revealed that this individual has engaged in behavior which is corrupt. If you earn 1 million leones and you within that same period acquire a property which is 1 billion leones, unless you are a magician, we cannot explain your behavior. And even when you shout that you are being hunted for no reason, the evidence will be shouting back and saying, you are lying. And I think that is what is important in this regard. Remember, whenever you speak the truth, you attract enemies. Remember, when you say certain things loudly, there are people who are against you. Once you are aware of that thing, you continue on the right path. I think it is one great person who used to say that when you turn back to throw stones at every dog that barks against you, you'll never make progress. As long as you are clear that you're on the right path, you move ahead because the law supports you and the people will support you, and you do the right thing, and the evidence will be visible, not immediately, but a little later. The verdict of the success of a fight against corruption is known later, long after those who fought the war have gone. It is history that will immortalize their contribution and success. Once they know that, they will continue to do the right thing, and they'll block their ears to all the negativity that attends the fight against corruption.
All right, the program is AYV Saturday Special, and we are talking about corruption, the state of corruption, the fight against corruption. And I have with me in the studio Francis Ben Kaifala, who is the Commissioner of Versailles's Anti-Corruption Commission, and Professor Patrick Lumumba, who is here to remind Sierra Leoneans of the effort being made in the fight against corruption. The number is 025-271-959. You can call and be part of the conversation, ask your questions, or make your comments. Good morning.
Hello.
Good morning.
Hello, good morning.
Your name and where are you calling us from?
My name is Khalil Baba Jabi. I'm calling to support of Freetown.
Go on, what's your take?
Oh, Allah, thanks for us today. You see, my day I've completed with Francis Ben Kaifala and our big stranger in this country. You see, this is the kind of people Allah sends in this world. You see, when you are satisfied with something that you have in your right hand, just forget about the other thing in your left hand. That Allah will provide you guidance and path in this world. born in this world to come apart. We are all strangers and passengers. Why do you need 4, 5, 6, 7 houses in this world with people's money? You see, this is why the retired Brigadier Julius Maadabiu brought this gentleman by the name of Kaifala. We know he's going to succeed. That is why he's taking the move. The move is to bring this professor to come and teach us what is the languages about corruption. You see, some of us, we don't even went to higher education or higher tertiary. We just stop at from 3, from what our teachers taught us in those levels. This is why we love Francis. Do your job. I know you have enemy that is in you. That's a fact. Because your cause is real. And when your cause is real, trust him. Prophet Muhammad, Jesus Christ will be with you in that office. And will make sure you succeed. President, you succeed. Because when you fail, my child failed. If his son is over there, child failed. If Professor Mumba came in this country, we fail. That is why we, the kids, are coming up. We always watch your program so that you educate us and see the way through of this nation. This nation has cried for a long time, over 55 years. If you go to Kobola, water will run your eyes. So what is this? Is this Sierra? This is why Julius Maadabiu appointed Francis Kaifala in that position. My brother, keep the fire burning. I bless you.
Thank you very much. 025-271-959. Call and be part of the conversation. Let's see if we'll be able to accommodate 5 calls. Good morning. Hello. If you want to be part of the conversation, stay away from your TV or radio sets, please, so that we can have a very good and nice conversation this morning. Good morning. Your name, please stay away from your TV or radio sets.
Good morning.
Good morning. Your name and where you're calling us from?
My name is Ismail. I'm calling from local housing.
Go on. What's your take, Ishmael?
Actually, we are very happy to have Professor Lumumba here in Sierra Leone as Sierra Leoneans. And it is not that he's coming to tell us about Sierra Leone, but to remind us about how we are going to fight against corruption in the continent, which is very, very good. And the one thing here is that we as Sierra Leoneans, we need to go out there to listen to his speech, and not only what he's going to say, but for us to have in mind that we are going there to participate in the program, to make sure that we listen and take into consideration whatsoever thing that is going to be recognized or is going to be a recommendation to us as we are fighting against corruption in the country. And we are very, very happy for the hard-working commissioner we have at the Anti-Corruption Commission. Our just is very, very, we have been working towards the development of this country and the fighting against corruption. But one thing also is that whatsoever things we are going to do as Sierra Leoneans must be in the best interest of the public and the people of Sierra Leone. If we are going to fight against corruption, we need to make sure that we did not use it as a witch hunt, as Professor was saying, in the fight against any political party or whatsoever. We as Sierra Leoneans, I want to encourage all of us for us to go out in the Chinese number to make sure we be part of the program, listening to the various speakers, because I'm quite sure, because I saw the agenda through social media, that it is not only Professor Lumumba that is going to give speech, but other big people in the country that are fighting against the corruption. And also, I want to say a very big thanks to Professor Lumumba for taking his time to come to Sierra Leone. I've been listening, I have like over 15 to 20 of his videos and audios, his speeches he has been making across the continent of Africa, and we are very, very happy for him. And also the commissioner, our hard-working anti-corruption commissioner, we are very, very happy, and we saw that he is going to continue the fight. He's not going to relent, as Professor was saying, the time to Ali for us to judge a marathon race in 100 meters. So I just want to rest my case here, and we hope to see a change in the government, and the new direction will lead us to the development of Africa and not only Sierra Leone. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. 025-271-959 is the number for you to call and be part of the conversation. Good morning.
Good morning.
Your name and where you're calling us from?
My life
Emeka calling from Canada Forward.
Go on.
Yeah, my question is for the Honorable Minister there, Mr. Ben Kaifala, who is the Commissioner of the Anti-Corruption. With all due respect, sir, are you not up to the task for the mantle that you've been given to investigate and bring to the book the people that have been held responsible for this activity? What is actually the essence of bringing another man from another country? That man has been given the same job that you are doing for a period of 1 year, and he was released. Whether he was released or he died, actually, it makes no difference. So, what is the significance that you will be bringing, or you will be taking to this matter that you will be giving upon? That's my question. Thank you very much.
Thank you. He would answer that. 025271959. Call and be part of the conversation. Good morning. We've lost a caller. 025271959. This is AYV Saturday Special. Let's take 2 more calls. Good morning. Hello. If you want to be part of the conversation, please stay away from your TV or radio sets, please. Good morning.
Good morning.
Your name and where you're calling us from? Go on, what's your take? Go on, we're getting you.
If people want to be clear, why can't they declare what because technically?
Can you please be audible a bit? Can you please be audible a bit? We're not getting what you're saying. I'm afraid we have to end it there. We're not getting what you're saying. Please. Good morning.
Hello, good morning.
Your name and where you're calling us from?
Yeah, this is Mohammed calling.
Go on, what's your take, sir?
I'm calling from Freetown.
What's your take?
Basically, I'm asking the commissioner as to what is going to do to change the dynamics that have always been in the commission, whereas the commission is always used as a tool to intimidate political opponents, which has always been the norm of the commission. So I want the commissioner to deliberate on that and tell me the strategy he's going to use and how he's going to change that dynamic and the mindset. He has been doing an excellent job as a young man. Within few time of taking over the office, he has done an extremely good job. His work within these few months is more than 10 years of work that have always been done at the commission. And therefore, I'm commending him for that good job. He's an excellent guy. We are going to give him the support as a young man. We're going to stand behind him. We know corruption is going to fight back. But this time, corruption will not win. Corruption will be surely defeated. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Let's go for the last caller in the conversation this morning. Good morning. Hello. Interesting with us Sierra Leoneans.
I see that it's all men calling.
We want a female voice.
Good morning.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning. Your name and where you're calling us from?
Yankuba calling from Shell.
Go on, sir.
This question is going to the Commissioner, Francis Ben Kaifala. What is the status of the case, the past WAEC private examination, in which students were caught writing the exam at Aberdeen Road? Is the way they arrest, that issue went on BBC, and now we are not hearing anything about that case. So what is the status of that case? And also, as Prince of Wales also, we knew some things happened there in which cases were reported to anti-corruption, but we are not hearing anything about those cases. So please, Mr. Commissioner, tell us something about those cases. What are the status of those cases? Thank you very much.
Thank you. And so because the commissioner is pleading that he likes to get Let's see if this is going to be a woman.
Yes,
But-
if it's not a woman, then we got it. We know that it's
Good
all-
morning.
Good morning.
Oh, okay. You're lucky you're on the line already. Go ahead. What's your name and where are you calling us from?
Good. The concerned citizen. Okay. And the first place I want to commend Professor. I want to say welcome to Sierra Leone. This is the man that I am admiring. That's now the second person I admire is QPI and the colonial killer. But they are brilliant contribution to West Africa. But I'm telling you with all the doubt that this commissioner is not ready to fight corruption. Because first thing, those are in the higher positions have paid a huge amount of money, and these workers are giving 500 or 600,000, and these people are facing the one paying 600,000 for corruptions. Why can't this commissioner advocate so that those relief and salaries will be upgraded and so that corruption is minimized instead of saving poor teachers, understand? And with all things that this commissioner was paid, his country paying now 60 million euros, and it is paying 800,000, 700,000. Is that right? Is it the proper way to tax things? We are supposed to layman, and we can tell these and certain positions are the generality of difficult corruption. And the second thing again, there's the call made by the commissions that some people are collecting money, but because of they are the same party, a call again came from the commission and said, we have received a call from your school to tell us that you are collecting money from the people. So we stop that. Because they are in the same political arena, they did not go get to arrest. You see, political
Okay, that's where we have to end this particular segment and allow the guests to respond to the questions and the comments.
I see the calls are coming in, and I appreciate because it tells you the level of civil engagement on corruption issues. You see the passion of people speaking, both those who are commending and those who are raising concern. We are very happy with them. We want these conversations to continue for people to really bring things on board because their feedback inform our actions, they inform our judgments and where we go. A few questions there. I will group some of them together, particularly the ones that have to do with weaponizing the commission. If the commission has been weaponized before, I am going to make sure that it is de-weaponized. That is why every single person that is being investigated by the Anti-Corruption Commission, we bring out the evidence against the person. We discuss it. Our public education team engage the public on it. If somebody wants to see or know why this person has been arrested or is being investigated, my doors are open. Come to me. I will show you live evidence. It's for the people to understand that as a person, I have no particular interest in arresting or detaining or punishing anybody. I have a national call to serve my people, to help reduce corruption in the public space, and I'm going to do so. And in doing so, it does not matter whether you belong to Party A or Party B. It does not matter what language you speak. It does not matter what part of the country you come from. It does not matter whether, in fact, you are my friend or you are not. What matters is the facts and the evidence. Once that is there, I am assuring the people of Sierra Leone that will inform our action. On the question about the WAEC investigation has been completed. It has been completed. The report has been made and submitted to me. We are about to send the report out. It's several pages, so it's difficult for us to disseminate to the public. But what I can say is that we discovered serious system lapses at WAEC. System lapses within the exam scripts management system, whereby people take exams at institutions. Those exam papers are supposed to be returned within 2 hours of completion of exam. Sometimes they are not returned until after 1 week. Sometimes they are not returned until after 5 days. So what they do is, those people who have custody of those papers take other papers, call these very students who took the exam, take them to a center, have them retake the exam under non-examination conditions,
then replace the scripts that they have. And they then take it to the center, and the people who are managing the exam center happily receive them, put them in the system. And these students who do not deserve to pass end up getting A's and B's. That is basically the result. But the report has been completed, and we are sending them out, and I have engaged the leadership of the WAEC for us to do systems and processes review. The students who were arrested taking the exams, they are there, but they are victims as far as we see them. They are victims of a system that has refused to put in processes that guide examination process. Taking them, detaining them for a very long time, prosecuting them is not going to be reduced. So we are going to advise systems and processes review that is going to make sure that these things do not continue or repeat. However, as you know, the king, the main person in that investigation is one Ray, something Ray, I've forgotten his first name. He's on the run. He was the one in WAEC who was coordinating what was happening. The release of scripts, the return of scripts. He ran away the moment we arrested the students, and he has been on the run. The wanted paper is out there. The public should help us arrest him. He is the kingpin who should be arrested. There's another person called A-Boy who was also arrested. A-Boy was coordinating with this Ray. A-Boy is within our radar, and we have completed. We are about to charge A-Boy to court. But it will be very good for the country and for the people and for the educational system if this Ray man can be arrested and charged together with A-Boy so that we can set real examples. But the report will be put out there for the public to see. In a nutshell, today is an opportunity for Sierra Leone to have the professor in Freetown. The public lecture at Frabe College is going to be free. It's going to be open to everybody. Subject only to city restrictions, because we are going to have ministers, we are going to have from the chief minister down, we are going to have head of departments, we are going to have people from the academia, we are going to have a lot of people coming in from everywhere, from civil society, from every strata of society, senior journalists, everybody there to hear Professor Lumumba speak at 4 p.m. today at the amphitheater. So there will be issues of sitting restriction, but we took it to an open space so that everybody can have an opportunity to hear. You don't have to be seated. You don't have to be close to the professor. You can be as far up on the campus and hear what Professor Lumumba is going to speak. So we want everybody to descend down on Frabe College today for us to hear this historic lecture, which will signal the turning point of Sierra Leone in the fight against corruption. What has been happening in the fight against corruption since I took over 5 months ago is the preface. We have just seen the preamble. The real chapter 1 is going to start on 1st of January 2019. Thank you.
Thank you. Somebody asked a question which I think we must answer. Why do you call somebody from another country? I think that question must be answered.
I agree.
And it must be answered in this way, and I think there is a sense in which I had spoken to it, that we are a continent that is moving as a continent, and what happens in Sierra Leone is important to any person who is sitting in Zimbabwe, who is sitting in Nairobi, Kenya. And one of the reasons why you call people, for some of us, and I think Francis mentioned this, is not the salary. We could be sitting in our little law offices and practicing law anonymously. When you see people coming out and speaking and moving from country to country in Africa and in different parts of the world, crusading about corruption, it means it is resident in their hearts and minds. It means that there is something that touches them and that they are putting their lives on the line. And when people leave their comfort zone and they come and share things with you, they have a contribution to make. So your duty is to ensure that you also make your contribution. And if each one of us make our contribution, that is what we do in the fight against corruption. That does not say that there will not be people who are negative. There are people in the world who, for every solution, as the wise man said, they have a problem. For such people, we'll continue to pray for you. but we will continue our crusade nevertheless. God bless.
I agree. And just to add a little voice to what the professor has said, the professor made a clear allusion. The cobweb is something I like so much. You see the cobweb in your living room, you think it is part of your furniture. Because you go to this living room every day, you don't even notice that it is a problem. The cobweb should not be there. It's filth. It's dangerous. It's a health hazard. It's collecting things that fall on you and you have flu and all these things. And then you have a stranger coming. The stranger looks at this cobweb. You are calling it furniture. He says, no, 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 that is not furniture. That is a cobweb. And then suddenly you say, yes, now I can see it. It's a cobweb. It's not my furniture. And you remove it. Absolutely. That is why we have brought the professor. Absolutely. The professor is here to help us identify the cobwebs that we have gotten so used to. And we think it's part of our furniture inside. So
he's a necessary stranger.
He is here as a necessary stranger, and we are very happy to receive you. And the bulk of the population is happy to receive you. And you are going to see the result today when you get to the amphitheater at 4 p.m. today, where we are inviting every Sierra Leonean to be there to listen to Professor Lumumba speak, as well as other eminent people who have all come. For us to converge on the citadel of corruption, for us to build a strong wall against it, for the siege to really take place against it, so that when the assault begins, it will be easy to destroy their strongholds. Thank you, Professor.
What do you like about Sierra Leone?
This is a land that has great history. This is a land that has resources that are unmatched in many parts of the world. This is a land that, if it were to realize our potential, would be a land to which we would be coming to learn many things. This is a land that has a rich history. This is a land that, if you travel in her, you see the potential in agriculture. This is a land that has mineral resources. This is a land that has produced men and women that have met in different parts of the world. This is a land that could make a contribution not only to her people, but to West Africa and to the continent of Africa. This is a land with a rich history. This is a land with character. This is a land that, if it does well, Africa will do well.
Thank you very much, Professor Patrick Lumumba. It's been a pleasure talking to you here this morning. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Francis Ben Kaifala. Always a pleasure having you here.
Thank you. And as you know, I am a partner with AYP. I'm always happy to be here.
Thank you. Well, this is how we come to the close of this particular edition of AYV Special. We've been talking to Commissioner Francis Ben Kaifala. We've been talking to Professor Patrick Lumumba on the commemoration of the International Anti-Corruption Day and the fight and state of corruption in Sierra Leone. And I've been your host, Samuel Wise-Bangura, saying many thanks for watching and listening to your home of all things factual, credible, and all times balanced. And definitely we will bring to you live from wherever you are in any part of the world this engagement in the afternoon at 4 p.m. from Frabe College.